Welcome to Understanding the Bible with Pastor Stephen. This is Season 3, Episode 9, Aliens, Humans, Gods, and Ghosts. So I just wanted to share why I do the bunny on my YouTube podcast. I figured you guys didn't want to see my ugly face. So it's cute. It's my pet bunny. My kid's bunny is named Lola after the Bugs Bunny cartoon, Bugs Bunny's girlfriend. And so I just thought it was fun to share our little bunny playing around, and she's fluffy and cute to look at. So that's why I do that. I hope you enjoy it. I will also be able to send you a copy of my notes if you email me. Just wanted you to know that. If you have any questions or want to see some of the things that I have in writing, my email is angrypatriot42@yahoo.com. But let's go ahead and get started today. So last time we had talked about what are angels and the different words for angels in the Old Testament, Malak in Hebrew, or Elohim for spirit. In the New Testament, it's angelos or pneuma for spirit or breath, and that's Greek. And then we talked about the correlation to the ancient gods of Egypt, Greece, Rome, and the Norse gods. And the conclusion was that demons are the exact same things as angels. And because of that, many stories of ancient gods are actually true. Those stories you can read in Genesis 6 explains how those demons went after strange flesh, had sex with humans, and how God has chained them up until the end times because they have sought after strange flesh. And that's in the book of Jude and elsewhere in the Bible also. But their offspring in Genesis 6 gave rise to the stories that we have today of all kinds of magical creatures. And I'm talking like half-breeds like mermaids, satyrs, centaurs, and satyrs are actually mentioned in the Bible in Leviticus. Hercules, sirens of the ocean, etc. And this is why I believe God chose to destroy the earth with a flood. Now, these stories were passed down by Noah and his 3 sons, the only surviving people from that time. And all the way to the Tower of Babel, when people were dispersed, got new languages, and they spread over the whole earth. Well, those stories told by their great-grandfathers, of course, were then watered down in new languages with new cultures told from their perspective. And so we get all these false gods. That's where I believe all these stories come from, and I think a lot of them are true. That's what we talked about last time. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you didn't hear it, I encourage you to listen to it. There's some really cool stuff and parallels in the Bible with angels and demons versus the stories that you hear of those ancient gods. So this time, we're going to talk about aliens. Well, why? I mean, the main reason I want to bring this up is that it's all in our culture. The government's even talked about it. Academia in the universities and such, they bring it up. So it's very popular to talk about aliens, and I want to point out what the Bible says about that, all right? So first of all, just real brief, we have some movies about aliens. If you guys aren't familiar, I mean, it goes all the way back to the television Star Trek series, right? All the different planets they went to. And then the movies Aliens, Predator, Men in Black, Avatar. All of these are fanciful ideas of creatures from another planet, another solar system or galaxy that have evolved and come and discovered humans or vice versa. Now, that in books and ancient writing, this actually goes all the way back to, as far as we know, Lucian of Samosata, or Samosata, and even to modern day science fiction writers, Isaac Asimov, stuff like that. But this guy, Lucian, was a satirist who wrote a book called A True Story, which included aliens on the moon, and he wrote this about 200 AD. Then we have Voltaire. He wrote a story in 1752 called Micromegas, which was aliens from other planets coming to Earth. War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells in 1897. And then I, Robot, recently made into a movie with Will Smith, is actually based off of Isaac Asimov's short stories in the 1940s and 50s. And then recently in human history, we've started to get this idea of abductions. And it kind of started around Area 51 in the 1960s with Betty and Barney Hill of New Hampshire. They made an extraordinary claim that a spacecraft with gray aliens with big eyes captured them and did probings on them with weird instruments. And of course, we have UFO sightings since the 1950s, which I believe is what sparked those two people to do that. But that's kind of popular culture. A lot of people talk about this stuff. Well, what does the government have to say or have to do with aliens? That's come out recently, and I want to cover this real briefly because a lot of people either aren't aware or they start to believe it. And I want to show you why you should really disbelieve some of this stuff. But Area 51 is the common name of a highly classified United States Air Force facility within Nevada that's administered by Edwards Air Force Base. It's a testing facility for new technologies, okay? People that work there have in the past periodically come out and talked about aliens and UFOs only to be debunked or discredited every single time. Now, you can say that that's a conspiracy by the government and they were falsely discredited. And that's fine. If you want to believe that, that's fine. But even that is not circumstantial evidence because we don't even have proof that they were falsely debunked. So it's just an idea out there. It's a conspiracy that has no evidence that the government is hiding stuff. So essentially what this is saying in regards to UFOs and aliens in Area 51 is that we think that if we could prove the government did this, then we might have the possibility of circumstantial evidence for UFOs and aliens. Well, that's a far cry from hard evidence. So it's really just made up ideas, okay? But where did they come from? What are these made up ideas? Well, the military, just so you know, I do have a background in this stuff and I wanted to explain some of it to you. The military at Fort Stewart in the 1940s and 50s started doing radio-controlled airplanes, so unmanned aircraft, right? For training on anti-aircraft guns. Now, I personally was an instructor at flight school for over 10 years for the Unmanned Aircraft School in Arizona at Fort Huachuca. And I can tell you, there's a lot of things that civilians aren't aware of that we're doing. For instance, over the water fountain that we had in the hallway where students would pass by every day, we have a picture from the 1970s of there at Fort Huachuca, us testing round aircraft with lights around the edges of it. Unmanned, round aircraft that hovered. Okay, 1970s. We have a picture, a black and white picture of them testing that. And that's something that everyone who's been to that flight school has seen and they're aware of. So one of the things to understand is that UFOs merely means unidentified flying object. So what that means is that you, the observer, don't recognize the aircraft type or model, or you couldn't read the markings or serial number on the plane, and it's not on a registered flight path. So just because you don't know what it is does not mean it's extraterrestrial, right? And that's my point here. There's so many things that I got to work with, technologies that you would think is just from the movies, and I didn't even have a top secret clearance. And I was not involved in testing anything new. I taught the stuff that was widespread knowledge and in current use by American military and many of our allies. It's all just basic application of common things like light, lasers, radios, sonar, infrared, rocket propulsion, all of this stuff. Clearly not alien technology, just basic human understanding that the government has been able to put stuff together and make cool things with. So once you learn how it's put together and how it works, it's pretty simple, really. So one of the things that really got people in the news media and such riled up about was July 26th, last year, 2023, Congress supposedly admitted to aliens. All right. And that was a big thing. U.S. Navy pilot Mr. Graves testified to Congress. They talked about how UFOs, unidentified flying objects, have strange shapes, strange flight patterns, strange speeds. Pilots and observers frequently see these things, and they began to call them phenomena. So instead of UFOs, they started calling them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. So they came up with a new word to try and scare people and to make people aware of UFOs again so it doesn't sound like a conspiracy about UFOs. Now they're called UAPs. Then somebody in Congress that was testifying stated that the U.S. has recovered non-human biologics from alleged crash sites of these UAPs. And of course, that went viral. Everyone's talking about non-human biologics. They found biological evidence of non-humans. All right. And this one really got me. One of the top 3 people that was testifying was Mr. Grush, and he testified a whole bunch of stuff. And his evidence was, as I was told it by someone else. He was told to tell stuff to Congress, stuff that he hadn't seen, wasn't aware of himself. So to me, this congressional hearing was clearly a psyop against the American people. It's psychological warfare, okay? To either distract from something else or to prepare the American people for something that they're going to do to give the government a scapegoat or a cover story of aliens. So I'll break it down for you just so you know if you did watch that, or you can Google it. It was Wednesday, July 26, 2023, Congress admitting to UFOs. Okay. But first of all, UFO does not mean alien. It means we can't identify it. Could come from another country, could be an experimental aircraft. We just don't know what it is. UAP does not mean alien. It means an aircraft we don't understand, or the observer did not understand. And I guarantee you in the 1970s, if an observer saw us flying those round unmanned aircraft at Fort Huachuca, they would have thought it was a hovering alien spacecraft. But we were teaching it, like learning, developing this stuff. Also, their prime witness, Mr. Grush, alleged that he is a whistleblower based on information he was told by other people. That's hearsay. He uses the logical fallacy of an appeal to authority, whereby you don't dare dispute his claim because of, and he went on about this, his many titles, his veteran status, his authority, as in his own words, quote, I'm a GS-15, the civilian equivalent to a full bird colonel. So don't you dare dispute what I have to say. And I've heard somebody has told me to tell you this stuff. That wouldn't hold up in a court of law. That's nothing. That's just some blowhard saying that he knows something that you don't know. But he made it up. His primary evidence was the recovery of UAPs with non-human biologics. This just means experimental aircraft crashed with monkeys or dogs doing the test flights. Non-human in the pilot seat. Right? It's a complete psyop. It's completely fake from the government anyways. Now, then we have modern thought, academia, colleges and such. Now they're pushing aliens, okay, because of evolution. This is pushed everywhere because of the idea that if human beings evolved, it stands to reason that aliens evolved on another planet. The problem is we didn't evolve. We know that God created us. But here's the point. If they can get the next generation of Americans, kids growing up, to believe that there is no God, so it stands to reason that aliens evolve somewhere else. They have to have, because if we evolved, then on other planets, something else must have evolved. So we've got to find them. This will prove that God didn't create us according to them. Because if we find aliens on another planet, boom, that disproves the Bible. This proves that science is right. God never existed. You guys are a bunch of religious fanatics. That's the purpose. Now, I want to show you what the Bible actually says about aliens.